Roll call.
Okay, Mr. Weddleton,
Here.
Mr. Trainee,
Here.
Mr. Peterson,
Present.
Ms. Dembowski, Mr. Constant. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And he informed me that if he sees a turtle with a straw in his nose, he will ban straws. Snorkeling with the turtle. So, okay. So we have agenda here. Any comments on the agenda? Additions or changes? Oh, we should go around. Let's get everyone's names. I'm sorry. So, Suzanne.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Pete Peterson.
Team Gates, Cindy Kempson.
Felix Rivera.
Rich Fern with Land Use.
Ryan Yell with the Planning Department.
Debbie Roll with the Municipal Clerk's Office.
Forrest Dunbar.
Ann Dawson and Gina Ashton as interpreters.
John Radden, Great Northern Cannabis.
Jed Smith, AMCO.
Chris Escher, RC Tinderbox. Olivia Lewis, RC Tinderbox.
Nick Miller, Alaska Buds.
Sid Skonovich with Sensi Media Group.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Sidney Skonovich, I'm with Sensi Media Group. Sensi Magazine.
Oh. Okay, good. Welcome. Okay, so agenda, any?
Looks good to me.
Okay. Monthly compliance report for Alaska Sense. That would be Rich.
Usually by the log notes in the report that we did the one full inspection on Cannebraska and Alaska Sense, and actually there was more than the two outdoor inspections. We've detected a little bit of an odor there, but it's not meeting the standards that we've set for ourselves. That I think we explained about, if we get a smell of marijuana that we want it to be either sustained or we'll stay in the area for 15 minutes, and we haven't had that happen. So even the day that Kevin Collins and I went to do the full inspection, when we first arrived, we had a brief odor of marijuana outdoors, and then it basically just disappeared. And then there was a little bit of a breeze that day. It was coming from the northeast, so we could tell on one of their exhaust pipes where the air was. We went and got one of the management folks and stood outside there for 15 minutes downstream of that, and nothing else. So I wouldn't say they're perfect there, but they're not in violation of the standards that we've set, as far as the violation goes. They've got a little bit of, I don't know what's happening, but it's up to them to figure out, they're getting a little purge from someplace. And we did get a complaint, I think it was through Miss France's email, I think it came from you, about the guy who lives a block or so away, from Bill Falsey, I think was in the email string about, he complained once before about marijuana odor and said it had gone away, but it had come back. So we have been, we'll talk to them, and they're aware of, there's just some real, seems to be short bursts of odor. It's up to them to figure it out.
Okay, we all got that email, I think, from the fellow. And I recommended you go talk to the management because they seem very sensitive to the issue now. So I don't, but he didn't go through the code enforcement thing and follow it.
No, I think Kevin Collins was going to try to reach out to him. He's never contacted us directly. And when we looked the last time, we didn't have any record of him being somebody that we've talked to in the past. So. But, and we've recommended, the last time I talked to Lorenzo, who was part of Alaska Sense there, we had another marijuana cultivation facility that was having odor issues, and they seemed to conquered the problems they were having. I recommended Lorenzo, go talk to them to see, what they tried and what seemed to work for them. So.
Of course, did you?
No.
Dick, you got anything on this?
Nothing at all, thanks.
Okay. Okay, any comments on that? All right, well, thanks, Rich. Is your sense that they're doing okay over there? You're just checking odor, or are we checking trash?
checking everything. The one inspection we do, we check everything. We go inside, we check the process, and we check the video. It's just like a brand new inspection. We do that once per month, and then at least twice the spot checks. That was your ordinance that directs us to do that.
Thanks. Okay, so proposed modifications to the plastic ban ordinance. Dean, did you, just offhand, so we have, for those paying attention, there was a ordinance that it was introduced for Tuesday. It will be in the app, the introductions. And basically that moved the effective date, it delayed the effective date 6 months roughly, and added important but not hugely significant aspect of the exemptions. And I had a little different notion, and that's the only copy you have here. So you don't have the one that's introduced, but that's kind of the gist of it. So this S version essentially takes, I think this has Suzanne's exemption in here as well. Is that correct? Okay, this does. Okay, it includes that.
It's in 15.
Okay, it adds one exemption that is for if you're paying with a federally funded source, and that was a pharmacist told me that if they pay with, if someone comes in and gets medicine or something with Medicaid or Medicare, it's supposed to be free, and they didn't think the dime fee would be legal. So this would take the dime fee away if you're paying, through a federally funded source. So it kind of parallels the WIC thing, the food stamp thing that we does. SNAP thing, right? But then it also, instead of delaying it 6 months, it leaves the March 1st date intact for the ultra-thin bags, and it retains the dime for the March 1st date, and it delays for the thicker bags for another year to March 1st of 2020. And that's what you have in front of you here.
Yes, that's accurate, definitely.
So Chris's comment on the phone was he's okay with this, but he would like to see, instead of the effective date, March 1st, 2020, make it December 31, 2019. And his desire is mostly, wants it all in 2019. And my desire is, we heard some people had 18 months worth of bags, and my sense is, why should we penalize retailers that do it wrong? When we get rid of the ultra-thin bags, with the dime, I think the dime is the most effective thing to get people to reuse their bags, and we get rid of the ultra-thin ones right away. We essentially met the main goals.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually had sort of the opposite thought, that for me, I really want to push out to September 15th, because I do think there are a number of small businesses that have a stock of even the ultra-thin ones. And to me, it's important that they get one more summer to dispose of them. So for me, pushing it to, I think I will be opposed to this ordinance just because I think it's a little bit too complicated, and I think people will be confused by it, and sort of annoyed by it. But even then, if it were to go through, I would really push for that September 15th date, which is what our ordinance does. And then going on later, I think that's fine.
Had you run into, because the ultra-thin bags, I mean, the huge stores, grocery stores doing them, and they can move them to other stores in the state.
Yeah.
But most smaller retailers don't, and the ones that do are just getting them at Costco as needed. I don't think people are stockpiling ultra-thin ones, because you can't get them cheaper than you do at Costco. So that, and you're not going to buy a 3-year supply at Costco when you can just go down there every week.
So that was my question, John, was when it comes to the bags and the supplies of bags that have been printed with logos, are those are primarily the thicker bags? Because I thought there were some businesses that also had printed some of the smaller bags. I am in agreement with Forrest that I would like to keep the September 15 date for all of them, but if there would be a way where it wouldn't be confusing to people, I mean, I would be okay with allowing for more time for the thicker bags. Honestly, I would be in favor of drawing the line at thicker bags and not banning all of them. I mean, for other reasons, because I don't think we can completely capture the exemptions. But so, I mean, just going back to my first question, so your feedback has been that it's the thicker bags are the ones that the merchants have stockpiles of and that have been printed with, okay.
That was my understanding. If you heard different, though, my main goal is not to penalize people.
Agreed.
Didn't do anything wrong, really.
Yeah.
Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, my question is, who came up with the March 1st date?
That's what the existing code is.
Oh, it is.
That's where we land.
John did. Remember, because it originally was going to happen sooner, and then John pushed it out to March.
Sort of, originally when it was proposed, we had 6 months, but it took us a couple months to get this thing rolling. So the 6 months would have
Oh, I
landed
see.
December 31. So I said, well, let's keep at least that 6 months.
Right, well,
It's spinning around.
That's what I was thinking, it'd be better if it ended at the end of a year, you know, so instead of maybe March 1st, 2019, make it December 31st, 2019 or something. I just,
To me, the logical ending place. This is why Chris and Suzanne and I have this ordinance at the end of the tourist season.
oh, in the tourist season, that's why you came up with
And
September.
that's where September came from.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
To some extent, but tourists, I mean, that's a big part of our economy, but it's not both retail. So you're dealing with people who made it stay downtown, but really,
But
I don't do much with tourists. So what if we moved it, because I'm like to send this for it and the other one, we can discuss it, it would be a lot cleaner except one, and I'm certainly willing to move. So if we delayed everything to September, but the thicker bags gave them, I'd like to go, because they were saying they had 18, someone said they had 18 months supply, and I'm willing to say, they're not so long time, so, and make that March or even April.
Are we sure that 1.25 is the right thickness?
The ultra thin are 0.6, so 1.25 captures a lot of, almost all my bags, you know, but I'm already starting the transition.
Okay.
Not that big a deal, but when we read about 1.25 and 2.25 tended to be the cutoff, and then below 1.25 gets those 0.6 mil, and those are the ones that are the biggest issue.
That's like what you get at a grocery store at .6.
T-shirt bags.
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're once again gonna get a bunch of public testimony on this issue, but if you were to change it to September, I would definitely be more likely to support this.
So could we do September, delay everything till September, and then give another,
Yeah.
go to March 1st for the thicker bags, ban those?
I would support that as well. I would put my name on the S version.
Okay. Did you get that, Dean?
Don't put my name on the effort.
So we'll, instead of the March 1st start date, we move it to September 1st?
15.
September 15th?
Yeah.
Okay.
So number 1 on line 24, instead of March 1st, that would be September 15th. Page 2.
Yes.
John, I've got a question for you. This is Dick.
Yeah.
When are you going to introduce this ordinance?
Well, the original one is introduced on Tuesday, and this would be introduced as an S version. We'll put it in lickety-split.
Okay, I would like the chairman to have a work session of the assembly down at City Hall, because I think we're going to get a lot of comments from the public. And that would be easier than having storm the assembly chambers with a lot of comments. We could have it a work session, John.
So, John, you would lay this on the table tomorrow, basically. Is that the plan? And then it would be on the agenda. They'd both be introduced, both be in the F, and then we could have a work session between now and, is the public hearing date on the 18th?
I think so.
Both of them? And we might, we're going to have so much these next 2 meetings.
You know, I think it's important to do this relatively soon, because at this point, the marching orders for retailers is that it goes in, it starts March 1st, so they're geared up for that, for anyone who doing the bags. So I think we got to give them warning as soon as possible. And there is a group, as far as it's being complicated, there's a group, the boomerang bags, people are geared up to get word out to every retailer. We pulled all the addresses from the business licenses and preparing it. Postcard's almost ready to go, but we waited to see if there were changes. So word can get out pretty quick.
Can I ask a legal question? So Dean, if we were to pass this ordinance, what impact does that have on the people who are currently circulating a petition to repeal the former ordinance?
I think that it won't really have an impact on referendum petition. I'm looking at that issue. I've had that question posed recently. Basically, if you pass an ordinance that does substantially the same thing as the petition, then the petition is cancelled. But this isn't doing substantially the same thing. It's making minor fixes, and although the code will change, the referendum petition is to repeal the whole ordinance.
Okay.
So I think that would still be its effect, even with these amendments.
Okay.
And David Dean knows that we're doing this. And I know.
Question.
Yeah.
On item A1, where it references the 1.25 mils thick, I mean, could we specify t-shirt bags? I mean, I think like the thickness is still somewhat abstract to people. And I don't know if t-shirt bags is a term more people seem to be using, or I don't know
That
if
has
there's.
a t-shirt bag.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No,
so-
within the industry, the ones that you get are called t-shirt bags. I don't know why.
Okay, well, maybe that would help.
If you're a retailer ordering bags, you tend to know the thickness, because that's the way they, when you look through the catalogs, they say, here's the bag, here's the size, here's the thickness.
Like you're talking about like t-shirt, like bags you like wrapped out a t-shirt.
Oh, no, I
Then you
was
shot into a crowd.
trying to think of a way to make it more clear to
That's what you thought a t-shirt bag.
members of the public, and I understand retailers might. And I think that the part about the federally funded program is really clear. And then exemption 10, I mean, does anyone have any feedback on that item?
Can I ask this question on the federally funded program? So, I mean, am I overthinking it if I think, the entire U.S. military is a federally funded program.
Mm-hmm.
All of their salaries are federally funded. Like, what is that? There are a lot of things that are federal programs that have 100% of federal money. But I think what you're talking about are some kind of federal assistance programs, right? Or some kind of, what some people call entitlement programs, although that's not always the case. So like SNAP is distinct from Medicaid in some important ways. But, and also, I mean, what if you had a pure state or muni assistance program? I don't know if any of those exist, but, yeah, I don't know.
That's a good point.
It probably is too small of an issue. Maybe like federal. Did you come up with that term, Dean?
No, not exactly. However, I would comment that the federal government is exempt from paying sales taxes, for example, and an aborigine would be excluded from paying sales tax. And usually there might be like a government card or something, so it's easily identifiable. I imagine this might be similarly treated in terms of maybe the fiat, which is point of sale. I guess there could be some areas where it's difficult to discern. I don't think that's going to be a real big enforcement issue, though.
Is federally funded
speculating.
Is federally funded program a term of art?
Sort of, I guess. Not.
Is it used elsewhere in our code?
No, I'm not sure. Let me look into that a little more, and I'll meet with the committee, assembly members about that term.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine passing it as is, but I'm just wondering if someone would clarify.
Well, we could, for a federally funded program, that would restrict payment of the dime fee or something,
Yeah. I mean, maybe practically speaking, it doesn't really matter how we structure it. We'll just know when it will encounter such a program, or retailers will know when someone says this is supposed to be free.
Well, so do we need to add an example, like, do we want to put SNAP in there?
Well, we already have an exemption for that.
Oh,
That was in the original version.
Okay.
Right, and actually, the original, the status quo is in your actually.
Oh, so we're not,
This is where we are.
we're not removing the,
No, that stays in.
okay. Well, that's interesting. So we like SNAP and federally funded program, even though SNAP is a federally funded program.
We could work on that. I didn't want to I wanted to minimize my tampering with the current ordinance. Yeah, this was, I got a call from a couple of people with pharmacy. And they just said, I don't think we can charge that. And they weren't opposed to doing it.
Yeah.
But they just thought that it's supposed to be free. When they come in, they get it for free.
Yeah.
And if I charge a dime, then it's not free. Yeah, what I do, there's just a question.
So,
No, go ahead.
so like in number 4, in the original ordinance, the fees in this section shall be waived for any transaction in which purchases are made with state or federal supplemental nutrition assistance programs. If we just took out the nutrition with state or federal assistance programs, took out the supplemental nutrition, I mean, would that cover it?
Well, commonly known as food stamps, food coupons, you'd have to
No,
change.
Yeah.
is Medicare like a, it's not thought of as an assistance program in the same way. It practically is, but it's thought of as an entitlement as opposed to an assistance program, even though the money that they paid in is actually nowhere near what's being paid out, but regardless.
Yeah, we paid for that.
Yeah, right?
Okay. So it may just be-
We're paying for that.
I've been paying for that for a long time. So.
Well,
Okay, so, aspersion goes forward, but we change the start date from March 1st to September 15th. And keep for the thicker bags, or thinner bags. And then thicker bags kick in March 1st, 2020. Does that work? Okay, Suzanne will put her name on that?
Yes.
Okay. So any comments from public on that? Okay. That work?
John, got a question for you.
Yes, go ahead. Dick.
Of course, so we're going to have a couple of work sessions, or at least one on this. I'd like to get the administration's response to this change to the ordinance, because they were in support of the last one. So I'd like to know how the administration responds to this as version change.
calendar.
Appreciate that, John.
Okay.
December 7th, that might be the, oh no, that's, a big chunk of folks are out of town on December 7th, that's why we haven't. Maybe December 14th, we could do it.
December 14th works for me.
No, that's fine.
It's a Friday.
Yeah. We don't need it to the school board. We have to convene the school board.
Okay, so moving on then. We have review of fees and fines for municipal marijuana licenses. And we have a big stack of fees and fines here. Dick, did you get a copy of this? It was emailed yesterday?
No, my printer's down, so I'll have to see what I can do to rehabilitate my printer. It died smoke fuse.
So our catalyst for this discussion was, do we charge enough for refusal of inspections and things like that? So we just have the whole gamut of fees here. So Rich, can you go through these some? I mean, are these reasonable fees? Are they comparable to others? Are they working to dissuade bad behavior? Any changes recommended?
Hey, John, could I ask you a question first before we start?
Yeah, please.
Let's ask the clerk's office where we're involved to make sure we're making enough money to cover our expenses. But this was never intended to be a fundraising exercise when we did the fines and fees. We just wanted it to cover the cost of the program. So I want to make sure we're doing it from that perspective, John.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Is that, Debbie, do you have any idea? Is that something we know what we're getting for the license fees? We split them with the state, right?
Right.
Are you up to speed?
I
with this
am.
stuff?
I do not know enough.
Okay. Okay, so we'll put that question to Mandy then, Dick.
Right, we'd also need to know the cost of the people we have that do enforcement, because that's a factor of it also.
Okay.
Jack Frost people and everybody involved in that to make sure we cover the cost of that. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks.
Is that possible?
What's that?
Do you know how much, do you break out your time to know how much was marijuana?
We did a rough estimate, and no, it's not. It's for the initial licensing phase. No, it didn't. But for the ongoing and renewals, I think it will. It's just the initial licensing phase was just it was a lot of time just because it was new. And there was a lot of hand-holding going on with the licensees. With the big confusion issues were the cross-pollination of the special land use permit and the building permit. So it took a lot of time. But since once the initial licensing phase was done, I think it is.
And I would agree with that. I think we're still not covering all of our expenses 100%, but I think we're getting in a reasonable margin. I'd say if you were to crunch the numbers from 2016 and 2017, there was still a lot of confusion on both the side of the industry and on the side of the municipality on exactly how this process is going to work. So now we've got the process ironed out pretty well, and everybody knows their roles really well, and we can really get through the process pretty efficiently.
Do you track your time so you know how much time you spend on a specific project? So it's just a calculation.
It's honestly, it's a bit of a guesstimation.
Okay. Dean?
I just wanted to mention that we have the fees in Title 21 as well for the planning department's work, and I guess we could compare covering those as well as fines here. But even if those put together about covering costs of administering the licensing program and enforcement, we also have the 5% retail sales tax, which I think probably more than exceeds costs. But this would be a good, I guess, question to follow up on. Perhaps Mandy, Debbie, or I could inquire with the Treasury Division, and they could give us a little report on revenue and try to compare with prices.
Okay. Well, we can work on that, I think. So it would give us a point of reference anyway. I wouldn't want to see plus or minus 15-20%.
Sure. And I've got a rough estimate that I've pulled previously. I can revisit that too.
Okay, good.
And give that information to you.
And Rich, but you know who you find, and you can say they're marijuana fines.
Oh, the fine nowhere close to covering our expenses that we, and then it never does on anything. It's not unique to marijuana. Just the time it takes for an investigation and hearing prep, and you're never gonna. I mean, a $300 a day fine for a typical zoning or housing violation. An officer's time is going to eat that up in an hour or 2 hours. So we've never had the expectation that our fines are going to fully cover our time.
Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I see that, once we get out of Title 10 and get into Title 21, we have fines for junk autos and accessory use and ADU regulations and that kind of thing. Are these fines all new, or is this part of existing code?
Through the chair, the Title 21 violations are listed in the Title 14 now. Those are all old. Those are from the old code. So 2145 doesn't exist anymore, and so that just was never updated. Basically, every violation now under Title 21 is $300, and that's specified in 2113, the enforcement section. So these fines are obsolete.
Why are they listed here?
I don't know, I can't answer that.
Dean, did you put this, who put this list of?
No, I think that Mandy put this together. I believe that these Title 21 fines, they generally ordinances as well as marijuana businesses. And I think that's why Smart is included here. They're not specific to just marijuana, but I just want to see some of those. Watch the cost.
Looks to me like a strict cut and paste. Just some extraneous stuff. So maybe within the industry then, Nick and Chris, I mean, what's your sense on the fees and fines for marijuana? You can find a seat up front if you want, or slide forward. Are they enough to dissuade bad behavior? Is it oppressive?
Honestly, it comes with the industry learning what part of the regulations as well. They have to know the regulations in order to know what fines they're going to include. And I think the industry has some knowledge, but this helps. And Nick and I will take it back to our members and say, you know, these are the fees, and there are regulations that list all the fees. So they're aware. Whether it stops them from doing it, didn't answer that.
Okay, so people are aware of the fees, or they have not really gotten the clean package of what the fees are.
We'll take this back
Okay.
to our members.
Well, clean it up. Don't do the 21.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So, I mean, have you looked at this? Do these fines seem excessive to you, or do you think they're reasonable, or?
For me, they're reasonable because I don't plan on doing any of the infractions.
Right.
So to me, it would be. But I'm also used to being in the medical field where it's regulated and there are fines that are much bigger than this. So to me, it's a little different. For somebody that is coming out the black market that doesn't know fees and are used to being regulated, they might take offense. So it just depends.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Suzanne?
A question, sorry for coming in late, I think you've been talking about this in previous weeks. Where's the failure to comply with an inspection? What is that one under?
I don't know that it's in there, and that we have a separate thing that is not on the agenda, but it's an entire ordinance dealing with that.
Oh,
And that
okay.
was when we dealt with that with Alaska State. So we weren't quite ready to talk about it. So that's coming forward. That is a big ordinance.
Okay.
So Nick, what's your sense?
They don't feel unreasonable to me. You know, sometimes you have to do things to get people's attention, and you know, the fine doesn't seem to be so large that it would, you know, really put the business at risk. But it would be a good reminder that hey, you know, you might want to make sure you take care of this problem.
Do you know how these compare to the rest of the state?
You know, I should, but I don't. So maybe Jed has enough. He doesn't have any idea either. I believe right now that the state doesn't have a lot of fines spelled out. They're typically dealt with based on the infraction and the circumstances that come forward. You know, there are some, but not an extensive list like this. That, you know, if you do this, open the table, it's beat. So that there are some fines, but it's not as extensive list as this.
Ford?
Oh, I was just going to say, the way you phrased the question, you know, I think that obviously there's state fines applies to everybody, but I imagine we're probably one of, if not the only other city that's going to do this, right? I mean, I don't know if there are, like, is there a separate Fairbanks or Juneau or like Sitka fine schedule? I would be a little bit surprised if there was. I thought we have by far the most comprehensive regulatory environment at the municipal level, state, I think.
Well, I know Juneau had a marijuana committee, but I haven't followed to see where their regulations or what the regulations are.
Okay, so Jed, APCO's put some pretty big fines on people. I remember for the testing lab had like $20,000 fine. They were huge fines. Is that, you don't have a list?
I don't
think that it's not in regulation, a list of specific infractions and a corresponding fine. I know that there's the board can impose a fine of up to, I think it's $10,000 for the first infraction, 20 for the second, and 30 to 50 for the third. But as far as like a corresponding, fine for a specific violation, I don't believe there's any guidance on that necessarily.
Okay. So, but those are much bigger dollars than we talk here.
Yeah, I think that they have some discretion, but make your own board. So.
Yeah. So, and that's why I was saying, we don't have a set schedule. We typically deal with the infraction and the severity and recommend the fine.
Okay.
Based on that.
All right, thanks. Dean?
Yes, I just looked up the state regulation here. It's in 3 AAC 06840 civil fines. They just have a small list. Board may impose a civil fine not to exceed the greater of an amount that is 3 times the monetary gain realized by the marijuana establishment. Licensing person is determined by the board. So I guess the board has to determine how much they benefited from the violation and 3 times that. And then they also have 10,000, so not to exceed the greater of that, or 10,000 for the first, 30,000 for the second, 50,000 for the third violation. So that's just a little bit more than our total.
Okay. So anything else on that then? I don't know that we had any real action plan. We just wanted to look at it, see how it works. Felix, any thoughts? Dick, any thoughts on fees and fines beyond figuring out how much we're getting?
No thoughts at all. Thanks.
Okay, and again, on the refusal of inspection, that's coming later. Probably the later meeting, the December meeting. I see Solid Waste Services walked in. Welcome. We talked about the plastic bag previously. I can give you a recap at the end if you came for that, unless you're here for marijuana odor regulations.
That sounds interesting. So maybe we'll stick around for a while.
And this I guess we're kind of exploring. I mean, so in previous meetings, we've had it on a couple of times. And Rich, you said you have policies and kind of a routine, and that's, is it written out? Did you bring copies of that? Or?
No, we haven't put it in writing yet. It's,
Okay.
It's just, that's our, policy practice right now, and I don't know if you guys wanted us to, or if you guys wanted to change the code and require that as elements of a violation. And that's what we're using right now as our own criteria, to, have imposed that upon ourselves. And Jack and I have talked quite extensively about this, that we actually like the way our code is written now. We don't think it needs to be changed. It's one of those, our outlook is it's not broken, so let's not fix it, because what we have is usable. And I think with the criteria that we've imposed on ourselves, I think it's a fair criteria to, for the industry and for us having to prove that in the hearing.
Okay, so can you go through real quickly kind of your key points then?
Basically, we have to, for an odor violation, for us to pursue an odor violation enforcement, we're going to detect the odor. We're going to stay in the area of the odor for 15 minutes to confirm the odor. We're going to record all the environmental conditions at the time, where we're at, where the wind's coming from, et cetera. And we're also going to immediately contact the licensee or the licensee's representative on site, and bring them outside and say, here's the odor, or here's where we're detecting the odor. So I think by following, excuse me, by sticking with that criteria, I think we're going to eliminate the, I'm not going to call it false positive, because you're certainly smelling something, but we understand that opening a door is there's going to be some escape. So if just one quick spurt of an odor, we don't think that really would be an enforceable violation. And I think with imposing upon ourselves that 15-minute rule or policy, I think it's going to eliminate that. And we've looked at that nasal ranger thing, and we don't have any faith in that. It sounds like it's a great fix or the way to go, but it doesn't discriminate between odors. I mean, you could have a donut shop or a marijuana cultivation facility. It's still going to tell you, and there's a lot of mixed stuff out there about that thing. So, that, you know, like I said, Jack and I have talked about this quite extensively. We think what we've got is working. We think it's fair, especially when we've imposed that 15-minute rule on ourselves. That it's going to eliminate, just like I said, that just a quick escape of odor. It's not going to be a chargeable offense. I think, and I haven't heard from the industry, but I would assume it would be considered fair.
You also had, it's been 2 people, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, yes.
Is there, and I just think of some of the things the industry said, it should be complaint driven. Like in some places, apparently you need some number, 5, 6, 7 complaints before you even go to investigate. What's your sense on something?
We don't think that's necessary. What we've got now is what we've got now is working. It's workable. It's fairly simple. It's not complicated, and we like uncomplicated, enforcement stuff. So.
So if you have a problem with someone, it could go to the administrative hearing officer? Is
Yes.
that correct? And
Yes.
so you say these are our criteria, here's what we've got. We've seen this.
Yes.
And they're okay with these criteria?
Yes, actually, it was, we developed where we're at now by going to the administrative hearing officer when with Alaska Sense and Danish Gardens, which was their facility that had odor issues. That it was basically questions that were asked by the licensee's legal representative at the hearing. So that's kind of how it was a learning experience. To be quite honest, nothing that we've enforced before, and that's how we got to where we're at.
Okay. Thanks, Dean.
Mr. Front, I recall reading one of the AHO's decisions in those earlier cases, and there were like 8 fines imposed, and the hearing officer upheld like 6 of them or something like that. Finding. So is that right? And that's because of that helps develop the procedure that you're talking about?
Yes, it is, because there's the odor in our code. The odor is addressed in 2 places. It's addressed in Title 10, and it's addressed in Title 21. The section in Title 10 we found is basically it's useless the way it's written. It's just the way there's a and that's actually it starts out stricter that you can't smell the odor. You're not supposed to smell the odor outside of the facility. Then it has language that carries on after that says you can't smell odor outside the facility. And I was worded.
I got it here.
Yeah.
You got a handout that compares Title 21 versus Top 10.
Okay. It basically allows a fix, is what it does. In the Title 21 regulation, it's at the property line, and
it doesn't have a copy.
There's none on the table.
in Title 21, it's at the property line and period. So we've been using the Title 21 regulation, and that's good.
Okay. Felix?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since you brought up Danish Gardens, I'm curious, how does the current policy practice deal with determining which license is the actual instigator for the violation?
As far as, since Danish Gardens is close to the Great Northern Campus?
Yep.
Wind direction. Right now we're back into the cold season, so it's a little bit, actually it's easier when it's colder out because you can use the exhaust stacks on the buildings to judge where the airflow is coming from. and that's what we've done with Danish Gardens before. There's, just off the top of my head, in the neighborhood, there's, on Azurite Court around to across from the State Building, there's a flag there, and there's some Flanner flags along, right across from Carlos Tree Service, and there's a couple of places in the neighborhood that there's some engineers take on. So we use all those little things to judge where the wind's coming from. So, you know, it's one of those things that, and even that area down there is kind of challenging because it's kind of an old gravel pit sort of thing. You get a lot of swirling down there, but you can generally, if you spend the time, you can get the general direction of the wind. And even when we've, Ms. Yeltsin or Welton, I'm sorry. What we've just used on-site stuff, and then she's actually gone and pulled up the stuff from NOAA, and we've been pretty darn accurate as far as where the wind direction and stuff like that's coming from.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could get the opinion when it's the appropriate time of the industry.
Yeah, we will. Anything else? Dick, any thoughts on odor?
Nothing, thanks.
All right, Brian?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the last committee meeting that we had, I was actually down in Denver at the Marijuana Management Symposium. So I got the opportunity to speak with a bunch of different municipalities across the country on marijuana odor regulation. And this is just my 2 cents of biased opinion, but I do think we have a very fair and straightforward common sense approach to marijuana odor. There are several other municipalities that have like a pyramid scale and 1 through 5 and the intensity of the odor, and that just introduces more subjectivity into it. And there are a few other municipalities across the country that are using the nasal ranger, but like Rich said, it doesn't differentiate between odor. All it does is simply detect odor. So you still aren't quite sure if it's detecting marijuana or if it's detecting donuts.
Okay, so, good. So it'd be interesting to hear a recap of what you learned at that conference.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Very well worth it.
Good. Okay, anything else? Boris?
No.
Dean?
Yes, I have a question for the county. Yes. So, as Mr. Fern stated, the Title 21 oral language is reliable, the Title 10 oral language, which is different, isn't that useful for enforcement purposes? And the committee wants to see changes to Title 10 language, similar to Title 21. Would that be helpful for enforcement?
Any thoughts on that? Okay, I don't like having stuff in code that we don't do. I mean, is your sense, should we change Title 10 to make it match Title 21?
What's in Title 21 works, so we'll stick with using that. If you want to change, if you want to, it allows. It really doesn't make a difference to us, honestly. We've got Title 21 that works, and what's in Title 10, it says it's not supposed to be detectable outside the facility, and it says you may have to do some upgrades if it is. So that kind of makes it unenforceable for the most part. So it's kind of a wash for us, I guess.
Any thoughts?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just looking under Title 10 here, the last line here in number 2, it says, except as allowed by a special land use permit for marijuana. So that would, if I'm reading that correctly, that would allow someone that has a small odor coming out just when people are coming and going from the facility. If they have a special land use permit, then that would be allowed. That's what I'm reading. That
Well, where the problem comes in, so there's some canned language in most of the permits that says if you have an odor issue, you have to improve your ventilation system. So we're happy sticking with the Title 21 versus a Title 10. And personally, and I think I can speak for Jack in this also, is that we're more comfortable with the property line versus just outside of the door. It's easier to differentiate with property lines at, you know, and that's specifically understanding that if you open the door, you're going to get some leakage. So we'd much rather just stick with enforcing at the property line just instead of outside the facility.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any thoughts from the industry, Chris or Dick?
No, I feel that's reasonable.
I think it's evolved nicely over the last, 18 months, both 18 months, and, I haven't heard a lot of feedback from the industry, which probably means things seem to be working, but I also know we have someone here from Great Northern who may have a comment, since they've.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean when I was going to industry. You raise your hand if you want to speak, and I'm
I'm
definitely
sorry.
going to point you. So go ahead.
John Redden, Great Northern Cannabis. I would just say that we felt that the way the municipality has enforced these, or their criteria, has been fair. And so given the circumstance in our neighborhood over on Cinnabar Loop with Danish Gardens and ourselves, we felt that that was reasonably handled. So we feel like it's being dealt with in a reasonable manner.
So my question is, do you know what the policy is? And Rich has outlined what they're doing. Did you know that was the operating procedure?
I think I would say more or less. I know that the lot line and sustained. I didn't know it was 15 minutes, but I would guess that the persons at the facility that are managing it are fully aware of that. They sort of represented to me what sort of the standard was, and I've been over there a couple times to test and make sure that we're in compliance. I think this is helpful to have it, expressly laid out. But I think we understood prior to this what it was and what the expectations were.
Okay. So if you're in the industry and you want to know what the rules you follow are you going? You really have to look a lot of places, but are you looking at Title 10 primarily, or are you saying, let me start at Title 21 and then see? So you're mostly going to Title 21. Okay. Well, that's good. Any other thoughts? I would like to see, Dean, what it would look like if we make Title 10 match Title 21. I mean, they don't totally conflict, but wouldn't it be cleaner if you had it all consistent?
Sure, or you can just eliminate the section of Title 10 because we're using what's in 21. It's kind of somewhat redundant.
That may be better. I guess we'd have to look, because Title 10 covers marijuana rules for mostly licensing, though, right?
Correct.
And is this a licensing thing? The license just says, what, don't have odor outside the property. Well, it doesn't. It says don't have odor outside the building.
Facility, right. And we prefer that property line.
Well, Dean, I'd like for you to look then and see if we could make Title 10 either eliminate that section, or if that would be confusing to make it match in Title 21.
Yes, and I wonder if it would be okay with maybe including that as part of our, I guess, upcoming ordinance that we've talked about to update Title 10 to match the state regulation changes. There's a number of them, and we wanted to track them, and perhaps this change could be included to track Title 21 as well. I'm sorry if I need to speak up, let me know.
That would be fine. I think, what's your schedule for that? Or is
kind of soonish.
Next year, okay.
Yes.
I think that would be fine. It sounds like things are working reasonably well. So it's not a crisis. I'd like to have code be consistent internally if we could do that. So it wouldn't be too difficult. Okay, so anything else on that? Anything? So we're near the end here. Public? We can start with you, Dean.
I can wait for hear other people.
What do you at that point? Honest participation? Any comments? No comments? Okay, well,
So-
sorry?
So we're not gonna be talking about this cease operations order,
No,
ordinance?
that got in the packet that you have, but we were postponing that till later. There's a couple, we want to get some wording, work out some wording with building officials before we bring it forward.
Okay, all right.
My name is Eugene Cohen, I'm going to represent myself. I live in Madison Valley, follow the public process. The public process is not appropriate. Decision made by the governing bodies or like the public interest. The thing that I noticed this meeting, but also many of the other assembly committee meetings, is the agenda. The public sees the agenda. They come to the meeting, they have no clear idea what's going to be addressed. It's easily to be changed because when that notice is put out for the meetings, you can put a little agenda word and you can click on it and open it up, and it's a simple situation. What I should note here is I'm sure there have been a few people that would have been interested on the plastic bag thing, okay, ordinance, and knowing that what's going on. And this S version, substitute version, is not available to the public until you had to come to this meeting, and won't be incorporated with the agenda for Tuesday until, you know. So this is unfortunate, and the correct thing would be is that all the assembly committee meetings, including this one, have an agenda that's tied into the notice. And also, I'm noticing a significant thing about this room, and there's a lot of noise coming through here. It appears to be a major disruption of being able to hear, and I'm concerned about that. And also the idea of connecting with people at 9 o'clock in the morning meeting, look at the issues that you're addressing. I mean, where's a fair chance for the public to be here? But again, they don't know what you're going to address. They only know the title of the committee meeting. And this also has to do with this time. You had the collection committee meeting, which I was yesterday. Their standard is not to have the agenda until literally when they start the meeting. And that's not right. And I guess that ends my statement with 1 minute left.
We can credit you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And I would say I did send 2 proposals to people who contacted me who were very active in the plastic bag ban, and also to several retailers who expressed interest and let them know about this meeting. And I haven't heard feedback from them on it.
Since you say that, Mr. Chair, can we let them know about the proposed work session, since we have one in the works?
Do we have, as soon as we get a date and time, we need
I texted Barbara and asked her to go for the 14th, so if that works, you'll see me know about it.
Okay. All right, anything else? All right, thanks.